This is insane. This card is actually insane. Hi there, Telebait here, and today some new cards are dropping, so I thought I'd go through my initial opinions of them and theorise some decks containing the new champion releasing Aphelios. So before we get into the cards, I'm going to give each a rating out of 5, 1 being completely garbage, unplayable outside of meme decks, 2 being niche cards which are rarely picked, 3 being an okay card and occasionally seen in top tier meta decks, 4 will be a card which is a staple in several meta decks, or a really key card in 1 or 2 meta decks. And finally, 5 will be Pale Cascade. Sorry, I mean cards which are clearly OP and need some sort of nerf or change. And if you enjoy your video, please leave a like and subscribe to see more reviews like this when the Shurima expansion drops in a month's time. Additionally, I put out deck guides and general tips to help you improve at Runeterra, so you might like some of those videos as well. That's enough intro for now, let's look at some of the new cards. First up, we have the Flight. This card looks nuts. So this is a 1 mana, 2/1 elusive, which is insane stat lines. That's really, really strong. Then it has Nexus Strike, draw 1, and shuffle me into the top 3 cards of your deck. So once you attack with it, it draws another card, kind of giving you the card advantage back and puts itself back in the top of your deck. So this is just a great card. It's a 1 mana, deal 2 damage to your opponent's Nexus in any sort of aggressive archetype. This card is crazy. And then you combine it with something like Nightfall, which is where this clearly is designed for, is you get a Nightfall prop, deal 2 damage every turn. This is insane. This card is actually insane. The big question in my head is whether I give it a 4 or a 5. I think I'm going to give it a 4, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's definitely a card which needs to be looked at some point. On to the next card, which is the Sky Shadows. A 2 mana, 3/1. When I'm summoned, reveal 2 spell mana if you behold a Nightfall card. So some more Nightfall synergy here, which is nice. Nightfall does need some help, and that's clearly what they're going for with this expansion. This card doesn't seem that good for me, just because it's really, really bad value, which you could say you don't really care about in an aggressive deck or aggressive archetype like Nightfall. But a big problem with a lot of these aggressive decks is you run out of steam, and this just makes you run out of cards even faster. Take, for example, something like Claws of the Dragon, which is a great addition to something like Lee Sin Zoe, that doesn't see play at all, and that has 1 extra health than this. And it's a very similar effect. Claws of the Dragon doesn't cost anything, just gets played from your hand. I just don't see this being very good. Like a 2 mana, 3/1, give you back spell mana. In aggressive archetypes, you don't really care about spell mana that much, in general anyway. You're usually trying to be aggressive with your units. I just don't see this card being that strong. So I'm going to give this card a 2. Next up, we have the Fangs. Lifesteal, 3/2 for 4 mana, which is very bad stat-wise. Play, invoke a Celestial card that costs 3 or less. This is a decent card overall. The best thing to compare it to is Dead Bloom Wanderer, which is a 3 mana, 3/2 with Lifesteal. And that's like a very strong card in deep decks because it matches the game plan of stalling out, gives you more health. The Lifesteal effect's really strong. This costs 1 more mana, gives you the invoke effect, but I can't just help but think this is just a bad version of Solari Sunforger. Solari Sunforger has 5 more attack, 2 more health, only has Lifesteal the round it's played, but for the most part, that doesn't matter. I don't see this getting off more than 1 attack anyway. You're going to attack with this and they'll trade something into it to kill it 100%. Or they'll just like Mystic Shot it or remove it directly. The only advantage is you have the invoke, but I don't think the invoke is that big an effect in matchups where this makes a difference. This fits into a control deck or a slower deck, and it just doesn't. It gives you more value over Solari Sunforger, but less healing and less likely to get the healing off in the first place. So I just don't see this seeing play when you've got cards like Solari Sunforger instead. If you didn't have that card, maybe this card will see play. But while that card exists, I can't see this seeing play. And because that's the only reason, I'm going to give this a 3. Like, I don't think it will see play just because it's replaced by a card which is a 4 in my eyes. Next up, we have the Cloven Way, which is Overwhelm, Nightfall, stun an enemy. If it's a follower, stun it again at the next round start. And it's a 5 mana 5/4. So it's quite heavily understated, but it does have stun effects. So overall, this seems like an okay card. And then you compare it to what we have already. So you've got Crescent Guardian, which is effectively a 3 mana 5/3. It does need the Nightfall effect, but in any deck you're using this, you'll be proccing the Nightfall effect anyway. Crescent Guardian just seems so much stronger than this, to be honest. Like, the stun effect is nice, but 2 mana cheaper is a big deal. So I don't see this replacing Crescent Guardian in the Nightfall archetype. The only archetype I will think this will see any play in is some sort of Yasuo Leona deck. So this is more stuns in Targon, which definitely helps a Yasuo Targon version. But those decks are always a bit sort of slow and very reliant on Yasuo as a win condition. So they've never been that top tier. Because of that, I'm going to have to give this a 3. Next up, we have the Veiled Temple. Each round, the first time you play 2 other cards, refill 2 mana and grant your strongest ally +1/+1. This card seems really strong. This card seems really, really strong. It's got a decent effect, but the fact that it repays its cost in 2 rounds just seems insane in my mind. And I think this is going to see play in the very many different decks. Targon's already the strongest region, and then they're going to get a landmark like this. This just seems absolutely insane. Yeah, I think this card's going to be completely overpowered, to be honest. Like, just the fact that it refunds its own cost is a decent effect, and then it refunds its own cost in 2 rounds. Playing 2 other cards is really, really easy in most decks at the moment. Most decks have very low mana curve in this game, so this card's going to be busted, I feel. It's going to be in every single Targon deck. I'm going to have to give this a 5. Like, this is insane. Next up, we have Starkbone, and this card is just unplayable. If you Behold the Messenger, grant Celestial Allies everywhere +1/+1. It's a decent effect, but Beholding the Messenger is so unlikely. It's a card you have to invoke in the first place, which even with things like Spacey Sketcher, you only have a 50% chance of it popping up. Then you have to draw this. And imagine all the times you're running this in your deck and you don't get the Messenger. It's just a dead card. It's too much of a cost for what it achieves. It's just not going to see play at all. This has to be a 1. Next, we have Stress Testing. Remove Fleeting from all cards in hand. When I'm discarded, draw 1 Fleeting. And this is very similar to Starbone. It's just too situational. I can't see this seeing a lot of play. A lot of the time you run decks with Fleeting anyway. You need a low mana curve so you can spend all those cards quite easily. And in that case, this doesn't really matter. And if you're running a deck which is reliant on drawing this, it's just not a good plan. It's not a good plan to run a deck which is reliant on this. Because of that, I'm going to have to give this a 2, I think. I don't think it's completely unplayable, and I think it's worth some experimentation. But I don't see this card being very strong at all. Next, we have Troll Gifts. Grant an ally regeneration. If they already have it, grant them +2/+2 instead. It's 2 mana +2/+2. It's a good card. What can you say? Like, it hits that mark of, if you get 2 stats for every 1 mana on a combat trick, it's really strong. It does have the requirement of that ally does have to have regeneration to use it, but then it also has the versatility that it can be used to grant an ally regeneration. So it just seems like a really, really strong card. And it's a grant, not a give, which is not really that big a deal, but it is a nice little bonus. To be honest, I can see this working quite well with something like Taric. And Taric, in his current state, is never going to be a strong meta deck, but I think this can work in a few different decks and we'll see play. I'm going to give this a 3. Now we have Gluttony. Kill an ally with Last Breath to summon a follower from your deck that costs 1 more. So I had some thought about this card, and this card just has one big glaring issue. You want to be using this card on Curse Keeper. In a deck where you're running Curse Keeper, you're going to be running Blighted Caretaker. If you use this on Curse Keeper and get Blighted Caretaker out, you are going to feel so sad. And because that's like the main place where I see this card being used, and it just has that such a high risk, I just can't see it seeing play. It's not necessarily a bad card, but there's not the right Last Breath effects around with decent mana costs. You could have something like the Undying and then go into Wraithcaller, which would be really, really strong effect. Don't get me wrong, but if you're building a deck around those cards, how is that better than They Who Endure decks, which you see already? I just don't think Gluttony improves that archetype at all. So I don't think it will see that much play, but it's not necessarily the worst card. I'll give it a 2. Next up, we have Flurry of Fists, and this is a 3 mana, grant an ally +1/+0 and quick attack. If it already has it, grant it double attack instead. So the most obvious card to compare this to is Rising Spellforce, which is a 3 mana, give your unit +4 attack and quick attack. So the big difference is the extra attack, obviously, and give versus grant. Plus Flurry of Fists does have this double attack bonus. Like, in general, I feel Flurry of Fists is just a worse version of Rising Spellforce. Grant isn't that big a deal. Quick attack is a strong keyword, don't get me wrong, but granting effects have proven not to be that much stronger than give effects. The nice thing about this is it does have that opportunity to give it double attack, so I can see this working well with a card like Zed, especially if he gives double attack to his clone as well, is where I can see it being really, really strong. And I don't see that being a top tier deck, but probably a decent deck, and it's definitely something I'm going to be trying out. But overall, I'm going to give this card a 2. You're using it in very niche scenarios, and even then, it's not going to be a top tier deck. It's just going to be a decent deck to have some fun with. Powder Pandemonium. Summon a Powder Monkey and give a random enemy vulnerable this round for each time you've activated Plunder this game. That's potentially quite decent in the right deck. It doesn't spring to mind exactly how this will be useful, but a 4 mana summon a Powder Monkey and give a random enemy vulnerable can be quite strong. Because it's random, it's not that great, but if you're using this in a Plunder deck, it could be very, very strong. Especially, I'm thinking we've had Gangplank Sejuani super fast Plunder decks, and those could be really strong with these type of cards, because if you get that final sort of, if you get Sejuani Gangplank on the board, give everything Overwhelm, you can just finish off your opponent. If you grant them all vulnerable, attacking in optimally with your units can get you the game. So I think this will see some play in that deck. Will it be top tier? The problem with it is I just don't see it beating something like Targon at the moment. So I'm going to give Powder Pandemonium a 3, and I expect it to see some play in that sort of Sejuani Gangplank deck. Wild Claws. Noxus. An ally strikes an enemy. If it has Overwhelm, deal excess damage to the enemy Nexus. This is good. This card's insane. Like, this card has to be insane. What are we using it on? Mostly Darius. Darius is the obvious target for this, but this card has to be really, really strong. It's 1 more mana than Decimate. Captain Farron. Captain Farron's an obvious target for this, actually. 1 more mana than Decimate, and you're potentially doing like 7 damage to Nexus. I think this card will see some play. It's very situational, but it doubles up as removal as well. Like, you don't have to be using this to kill your opponent. You can use it to remove a big threat. Like, you play Captain Farron, your opponent drops something like Leviathan, they have Swain on board. You can use it to clear the Leviathan, so you don't get that stun locked. It has some versatility, which is always really, really strong, the card. I think this card will see some play. I doubt you'll be running 3 copies of it, but maybe 2 copies of it. Yeah, I think this would be a decent card. I'm going to give it a 3. We have Molten Breath. An ally with Fury strikes the 2 weakest enemies. This is great for a Dragon archetype. This is actually what Dragon archetype really needed, something like this. Because in my experience playing with Dragons, their biggest weakness is just being blown out early game. So if you have a card like this, which allows you to come back into the game, it's potentially really strong. The worry is you use it, you hit 2 1/1s and you still get overwhelmed anyway. But I think this is a decent card. Probably being a little too expensive and slow makes it not that great, but it will definitely see some play in Dragon heavy archetypes. So I'll give this one a 3 as well. And finally, we're going to have a look at Aphelios himself. He's a 3-mana 3/3 Nightfall. Pick a moon weapon to create in hand. Each round, the first time you play 2 other cards, create the phased moon weapon in hand if you don't already have. And when he levels up, he gets +1/+1 quick attack, and his moon weapons cost 1 less. Normally the moon weapons cost 2, instead they'll cost 1. So what the weapons do, one does deal 3 damage to a target follower, another gives an ally +1/+2 and lifesteal. You can stun an enemy, and if it's a follower, stun them again the next round. Infernum gives an ally +2/+1 and overwhelm this round. And Crescendum summons a 2-cost follower from your deck. If it has Nightfall, activate it. So in general, I think Aphelios is a very, very good card just because he generates that extra card, and Legends of Runeterra has proven to be a game of value. Cards which generate cards are insane, and Aphelios does that, which makes him insane. It's pretty much as simple as that. The most obvious one to compare him to is something like Draven. Draven has the exact same stat lines, has quick attack, and he generates axes. And then combining him with discard decks, you can turn those axes into draw, which is why discard aggro is so successful, because you generate that extra value. And I think Aphelios does the very same thing. He doesn't generate axes, he generates cards which are very, very strong in their own right. Like a 2-mana deal 3 damage, limited to follower, yes, so you can't use it to remove key champions. This would be busted if you could remove champions with it, by the way. 2-mana deal 3 damage is really, really strong. These effects are really, really strong. Summoning a 2-cost follower from your deck and activating its Nightfall is really strong. Crescendum is the one I think is the best. Just because it summons a 2-cost follower from your deck, it says Nightfall activate it, then you can play your Nightfall unit because you've triggered Nightfall for the round, so you get a double Nightfall unit effect, which is really, really strong. I just think Aphelios is going to be a great champion and definitely see play in meta decks. Because of that, I'm going to have to give him a 4. He doesn't seem completely overpowered, but a very, very good and strong card, so I'm giving him a 4. So let's get on to some decks that I made theorizing about how we can use Aphelios. And in these decks, I've replaced Aphelios with Taric. It just seems to be the thing a lot of other streamers and YouTubers doing, just using Taric instead. So wherever you see Taric, it's actually Aphelios, just because he hasn't been added to sites like Mobalytics where you can create these decks yet. So first up, we have what I call unoriginal, because it's the most obvious one. You just take the Zoe Lee Sin deck, replace Zoe with Aphelios. That's it. Same win condition, you just have a different value engine in there. I'm not really going to spend any more time talking about that just because it's pretty boring. Next up, the most obvious way to kind of build Aphelios, I'd say, is building him in a sort of Nightfall style. So when you're building him in this way, you have to pick which champion to remove, and sadly to say to Nocturne, Diana's just the better Nightfall champion, so I'm going with a Diana Aphelios deck. And a bit different from current Nightfall versions where they are very aggressive and look to do a lot of damage in one turn, using Nocturne to finish them off. Because we're not running Nocturne anymore, that's not our strategy. We've got a much slower control, chip your opponent down and then finish them off using Atrocity. And then you've got things like Eclipse Dragon, Lunari Priestess, and Aphelios to give you that extra value to help you survive in this game. And this is the deck I am definitely most excited to play. And I imagine a deck like this is where Aphelios will see its home and will be the strongest. The final deck I theorized with Aphelios is using a very sort of aggressive Nightfall style. So now that you have 2 Nightfall Targon champions. You can take the Nightfall package from Targon and combine it with a different aggressive package. So Noxus has a very aggressive package, which is where I'm going with this deck. So I take a lot of the aggressive cards from Noxus, Noxian Fervor, Decimate, Legion Saboteur, just the standard aggressive Noxus cards, combine them with the Nightfall cards, and the idea of this is you just beat your opponent down really, really fast and use something like Cygnus or Decimate or Noxian Fervor to finish off your opponent. And this just gives Nightfall access to cards that it didn't have before, so when it was restricted to being Targon Shadow Isles all the time, you just didn't have that much direct burn. This gives you a lot more options with that. It does come at the cost of a few strong Nightfall cards from Shadow Isles of Stygian Onlooker and Doom Beast, but this is definitely something I'm excited to experiment with and will give it a go. It's out of the 3 decks, this is the one I'm the least confident in, but could be really strong if it works, and this is what new patches are all about for me. Just experimenting, seeing what you can have fun with, seeing what's strong, just enjoying all the new cards. So there are my 3 decks for using Aphelios. If you can only go for one, I recommend trying the Nightfall Shadow Isles version that I showed you, but I'll update these decks as I play them, and any strong decks I will post on my Twitter, so definitely follow me on my Twitter if you aren't already. And let me know in the comments below which Aphelios deck you're the most excited for. Is it one of the 3 I've shown here, or is it something else you've come up by yourself? And subscribe if you want to see more weekly Runeterra tips and guides. Until next time, thanks for watching, and have a good day.